I'm not aware of that issue.
Question number 2, Colin King.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance and asks what reports has he received on the economy?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, the Reserve Bank this morning issued its monetary policy statement for September, which kept the official cash rate unchanged at 2.5%. Overall, the statement presents a slightly stronger outlook for the New Zealand economy than it presented in its June statement. The Reserve Bank is now expecting annual real production-based GDP growth of between 2 and 3% across the projection period out to 2015.
Order.
The monetary policy statement also notes that growth for the March 2012 year also turned out to be higher than forecast. This confirms the government's expectations of moderate and sustained economic growth over the next few years.
Colin King.
Supplementary question to the Minister. What were the main factors contributing to the Reserve Bank's stronger outlook for the economy?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
On behalf of the Minister of Finance, Mr Speaker, there are a couple of factors in particular worth noting. The Reserve Bank has raised its expectations around the growth capacity of the economy. Its projections for potential growth have been raised slightly for each of the next 3 years, with annual growth and potential output increasing from 1.7% to 2.3% per annum by 2015. This primarily reflects the bank's more positive view of trend labour productivity growth. A second factor worth noting is the Reserve Bank's stronger outlook for private consumption. This is likely to be driven in part by wage growth and retail spending data released since the June monetary policy statement.
Mr Speaker.
Colin King.
Further supplementary to the Minister. What observations does the Reserve Bank make about the international outlook and its likely impact on the New Zealand economy?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, the Reserve Bank notes that its international outlook is now slightly weaker than its forecast in June. Overall, trading partner growth has been revised down slightly, particularly over the next 2 years, and there is a risk that international conditions turn out to be weaker than assumed. These changes to the near-term global outlook are driven mainly by small downward revisions to growth expected in Australia, China and the euro area in the 2012 and 2013 years. The Reserve Bank notes the outlook for trading partner growth remains uncertain, particularly around events in Europe and the apparent slowdown of the Chinese economy.
The Honourable David Parker.
Is the Minister of Finance aware that the Reserve Bank submitters to the consideration of the monetary policy statement announcement today, when asked whether his associate was correct in asserting that a change in the exchange rate has a commensurate effect on the cost of living, said that his associate was wrong? And if so, will he tell his associate to get it right?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, I wasn't at the committee meeting this morning, but I do understand there was no debate that actually a lower exchange rate does have an impact on the cost of living. Nobody's suggesting that that was the case. There was some debate about the exact margin, but I think we can safely assume, Mr Parker, that if the exchange rate drops of the sort of 20 to 25% that he's seeking, then that would be a big increase in the cost of living.
Mr Speaker.
Point of order. The Honourable David Parker.
2 times already in question time this week, you as Speaker have heard those sorts of incorrect misrepresentations of other party and have stood ministers down. The Minister again makes the same assertion as in an answer to a question of other political parties' policies, which is wrong and out of order.
I apologise to the member. My concentration must have. I didn't hear that, and I would ask the minister not to make allegations of any policies up to with respect to another party, because the minister has no responsibility with respect to that. Supplementary question, Colin King.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Supplementary to the Minister. Given the ongoing uncertainty in the international economic outlook, what implications is this likely to have for New Zealand's terms of trade and external position?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, the Reserve Bank made a couple of observations about our terms of trade and external position. It expects the weaker international outlook and stronger domestic demand, combined with the strong New Zealand dollar, to result in higher import growth and slightly lower export growth than it predicted in June. However, it expects these changes to trade volumes to be offset by a stronger outlook for the terms of trade, reflecting recent stabilisation in export prices. Overall, the projected current account deficit over the next 3 years are now slightly smaller than forecast in June, at 5.4%, 5.7% and 5.2% of GDP. This compares with a deficit of 4.9% of GDP in the year to March 2012 and is significantly below the average deficits of 8% of GDP that the previous government posted in the 3 years to 2008.
Question number 3, Grant Robertson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister.